Few things are more important in school than learning to read. Yet across America, around the state, and right here in Western New York, a lot of districts are falling behind. Recent state education department data show just 40% of students in Erie County between 3rd and 8th grade can read at their current grade level. The lowest mark, just 17% in the Lackawanna district. Meanwhile, it's 71% in Williamsville. Our partners at Investigative Post dug into this yesterday, and we wanted to continue the conversation today. So joining us live is Emily Hanford. She is a senior correspondent with APM Reports. She's also the producer and host of the podcast Sold a Story that focuses on how teaching kids to read went so wrong. Emily, thanks for your time. We really appreciate it, getting the chance to talk to you about this. 30 states use this phonics-based approach to reading instruction. We talked about it a lot in the special report yesterday. New York, though, allows its districts to decide individually the reading curriculum. Can you first talk to us about the different forms of instruction that you found and how they kind of differ in their methodology?
Thank you very much for having me. Yet millions of kids aren't learning to read very well across this country, and part of the problem is how they're being taught. Many kids are not being taught what they need to know about how written English works. And not only that, but popular materials for teaching reading are actually teaching kids to read the way that struggling readers read. That's what the Sold a Story podcast is all about. So phonics instruction is important, but it's not just phonics. It's taking away these other strategies that parents may recognize by things like this. Your kid comes to a word they don't know. What are they supposed to do? They can look at the first letter, think of something that makes sense, look at a picture. Those, it turns out, are not good strategies to teach kids. And we know why, because of a huge amount of research that's been done over the past several decades about how we read, just how reading works in the brain.
And so, Emily, I think people are going to hear that and be pretty frustrated, right? You would expect that all of that research that has gone into this would be put to practice. Do we know why in so many places that's just not the case?
That is what I spend 6 episodes on in the Sold a Story podcast. It turned out that it took a lot of digging to figure out what's going on. And that's really what me and my colleagues were trying to figure out. Why? What is going on with the fact that there actually is a huge amount known about reading, how it works, and yet a lot of schools don't know about it. So we fought about reading for a long time in this country. You can find fights going back to the beginning of public education. And one of the reasons we fought is because no one really knew how we learn to read. The amazing thing is that scientists have figured a lot of that out. And it's just taken a long time to get this information into schools. And there's been some resistance to this research because of some political battles and belief systems that have just gone way back in history. So that is part of the story. And what you identified in New York, that schools are essentially allowed to make their own choices about what they want to teach and how, that actually really is fundamentally true all over the country. We're really a local control country, which presents challenges when you want to change practice in a big way. So if you want to really get some research into schools, it's hard when schools are sort of able to do kind of whatever they want. And it turns out that they're all actually doing a lot of the same things anyway. But a lot of those ways they were teaching reading didn't line up with what all this research found.
I'm just thinking of all the teachers' conferences and such, and how this must be just a huge topic of conversation there. I know it is such an enormous problem. One thing I did want to ask you about, though, we mentioned the big discrepancy in reading scores when you look at different districts within a region. Here in Western New York, we mentioned 17% is the number in terms of reading at grade level in the Lackawanna School District, which is more impoverished compared to one of our suburban districts in Williamsville, where it's over 70%. I imagine that's a common theme, right? You see these problems especially bad in areas where you may have more poverty in minority communities and such.
Absolutely. And poverty has an impact on reading ability. It can, right? So there are many things when you understand the process of how we learn to read, that things about your background knowledge, your parents' educational attainment, the affluence in your family can make a big difference. Here's something, though, that I want people to think about. Poverty has an impact, but I think we've let that be the explanation for far too long. There are actually many kids who are not from poor backgrounds who are having a hard time learning how to read because they're not being taught well in school. Something else that's happening is when you have a child who struggles how to read and you notice that as a parent and you can do something about it because you have the time and or the money, especially the money, you will do something about it. So there are parents who are spending thousands of dollars to make sure their kids get the reading instruction that they're not getting in school. So when you look at those reading scores, you can look at it and say, oh, poverty's the problem, and it's part of the problem. But I would like people to look at those scores and think, affluence is part of what's going on here. In some of the places where the scores are good, some of what's happening is the parents are taking care of the problems themselves. They're basically privatizing it by paying to make sure their kids will learn how to read, because any parent knows you will do whatever you need to do to make sure your child learns how to read. Everyone knows how important that is.
Most definitely. I'm out of time, Emily, but real fast, easiest way to find the podcast?
Soldastory.org. I hope you'll listen.
Perfect. Emily Hanford has been our guest. Such great insight. I learned a lot. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.